What is going on, y'all? It is the Caveman. I'm here with Football with Oz, Austin, for episode 20, big 2-0 of Against the Blitz. But we're welcomed by a very special guest, Tej Analytics. Tej, thank you for taking the time to join us tonight. We have a couple of tangents that we're going to break off into for the first 25% of the draft, and I'm excited to, whatever the math is, to pick your guys' brains with some of the stuff that we have to get into. So let them know where they can find you, because you do some wonderful work on Twitter. I've been following you for quite a while, so thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, no, appreciate you having me on, and it's very tough for me to do that mental math there as well to figure out what percent of the draft we're talking about today. But yeah, really excited to be here. Yeah, like you said, my Twitter is TEJFB Analytics, and then during the season, I host a podcast called Stats and Scheme. We're on like a sabbatical this off season, but hopefully we'll record like a draft related episode as we get closer to the actual draft happening.
Yeah, awesome. So definitely all of his links will be down in the description. As I said, I've been following him for a while. I only asked him because I'm a huge fan of his work. Like, I think he's excellent at what he does. So very, very big shout out to him. So check out all of what he does down below. All right. So we are going to get right into it. The first pick is where we're going to start. So this is kind of a mini series. I think we're kind of exploring that, but we're going to start this episode. And then throughout the next couple of weeks, as the draft approaches, go by eight. So 1 to 8 for this episode. That's where the 25% was correct. I'm proud of myself.
There you go.
So we'll start with Cleveland and the positional fits, and then we'll kind of let that unfold, because we have some would you rather questions that we're going to throw out there, and we'll just see where the weather takes us. So Cleveland obviously is the first overall selection holder, and Cam Ward seems to be the shoe-in, especially after his pro day. And
Cleveland is 2.
Holy shit. Why did I read that?
Yeah, Tennessee's got 1.
I knew that. I swear to God, I knew that.
Yeah. I know you knew that. That's why we talked about that all last week, which is why I was like...
It feels like Cleveland. The draft starts with Cleveland because, like, it's already like guarantee that Ward's going 1. So it's like, yeah, it does feel like that.
Thanks, guys, for making me feel better. That was a bad moment.
That's why it was a hand raise instead of verbal.
I kind of was afraid to call on you because I'm like, what is he going to say? He's never done this. Okay, so Tennessee has the first overall pick. It feels like that the Titans are a shoo-in for Cam Ward. But I guess this is where my first question comes in. And even though there isn't too much, it feels like to get into realistically with this pick. My question for both of you is, job security aside, because that's kind of a big thing when it comes to these draft selections, is us fans from the couch look at it from a very black and white standpoint, whereas these guys are drafting for their job. So if they have an opportunity in front of them, they're going to take it. So let's kind of remove that aspect just for a second and ask this question. Is Cam Ward, as an individual talent, truly good enough to be the first overall pick in this class? Austin, we'll start with you.
In most classes, I would say no. I even tried to compare him to last year's class, and I had him at QB4. I think I would take Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and Caleb first in this draft. So I'm going to say no. I don't think he's a first overall pick in like a vast majority of classes. It just comes down to the Titans being in such a desperate need of good quarterback play, having a new GM to kind of restart. And it just seems like the shoe-in at this point from everything that their front office has said. Like, it just really feels like this has to be the pick for them. But I don't think he is like a generational first overall pick talent.
Yeah, when I was thinking about it, I like I said, or like you said, it does feel like it's automatic, but it does feel like one of those things where Tennessee probably doesn't get back to this spot next year either. So you kind of got to take the opportunity, when it falls in your lap. But do you feel like, Tej, that he is individually as good as the first overall pick would suggest?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you guys where I think Cam Ward is definitely I wouldn't have a problem with him being taken number one overall at all because he is like the most talented quarterback in this draft in particular. But I do resonate with everyone else saying like when you compare him to other quarterback draft classes, like he would have been a little bit lower on the list. But I think really what it comes down to is like I'll never really have much of a problem if you take a quarterback in the first round because especially if you have a need to put a quarterback into your team because like that really is what every team is chasing at the end of the day is a franchise quarterback. And it's very hard to project quarterbacks from college to pro. So even if you're a little bit lower on Cam Ward, maybe than like the general consensus or compared to other prospects, like he still very well could end up being a good quarterback, much like how people were kind of low on Jaden Daniels last year, or maybe even CJ Stroud the year before, like relative to where they got drafted. And both of them have definitely showed that they've been able to do well in the NFL there as well.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, we were talking about the other day how CJ Stroud, like there was kind of a slander campaign sent out on him. And Austin was like, yeah, people thought he was like stupid.
Yeah, they made it sound like he was like legitimately dumb, that he couldn't process anything because like that one test they did with him. So like, yeah, I mean, like CJ Stroud, I think I even did have a very similar grade to Cam Ward in this class. Like, I wouldn't be shocked at all if Cam Ward could come in and be a really, really productive quarterback if Tennessee can just get him a little bit more help in terms of weapons. But yeah, like I do think for this draft specifically, like I don't see how they can go anywhere else but this quarterback.
Yeah, I would agree. It feels like this stems into my second question. It feels like if it's not Cam Ward, it can't be another player. It would have to be a substantial haul for Tennessee in their situation to move out of it. I don't think Travis would be worth it taking over what could be your franchise quarterback. But if the right offer came knocking on the door, let's not even entertain the offer specifically. Let's just say, are you even open to trading this pick if you're Tennessee?
You can go ahead, Tej.
Yeah, I mean, I would be open to it. I'm also a big proponent of trading back in the draft, trying to really take advantage of how teams undervalue future picks. So like if you could get a couple of those in there, I definitely would look for that, like a future first, future second, like type picks there. The framing that you had earlier where it's like if job security wasn't an issue for the GM and the head coach, like I could definitely talk myself into Tennessee trading back a couple spots, picking up some extra picks and taking like one of those blue chip players like Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, still in the top 5, like you mentioned. But just because you only have a couple of years as a GM and a head coach to actually get it right, like from the Titans' perspective, like if you feel good about Cam Ward, like you have to go with it just because you need to find that franchise quarterback.
Yeah, I agree. I think the job security thing is so prevalent to the point where it's probably on the front of these guys' minds more than like who the actual player is that they're drafting to some capacity. Like I think that's how much it influences their decision making. So once again, we'll return to if that trade did come knocking, the Saints are a team that maybe could explore this, maybe even the Jets. What kind of offer are we talking? Because at the end of the day, you're not just trading the first pick. You're trading your rights to Cam Ward. So it really comes down to, at least in my opinion, how you value Cam Ward and the projection you have for him in the near future. So if the Saints came knocking in.
Come on.
Okay. And if they offered you the 109, your first next year, and the 40th overall pick in this class, which would be their second, is that enough?
I think it depends on their confidence in Shador being there. And I do feel a little bit better about Shador falling after the Giants just double dipped at veteran quarterback. I mean, at this point, if you can kind of get a feel from the Browns that they're not going to take him, I'm not confident the Jets or the Raiders would either. So I'd probably feel pretty comfortable getting a lot of really good value for for Cam Ward in this draft. I'm always open to entertain it, especially considering like I don't really value him as like a generational first overall pick prospect, more just like a decent good quarterback. So I mean, I definitely entertain it, but only if I had like a good insurance that I could still get a quarterback for this season if Shador Sanders is gone.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like, I think if they knew that Shador Sanders would still be available at 9, and you have maybe like a 1 point grade difference between the two of them, like you can definitely feel comfortable taking him there. But just because of the risk of him going within the first 8 picks, makes it a little bit tougher. But yeah, but I mean, if the Titans were to get like the haul that the Bears got to trade out a number 1 from the Panthers, whereas 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and DJ Moore, I believe. So like, you could even consider that as like three firsts and 2 seconds. Like, I mean, that it would be hard to turn that down. I feel like if they were in that spot.
Yeah.
I think that would be malpractice to turn down that offer. Like, I mean, even I don't know how many quarterbacks as prospects, without being influenced by hindsight, that you could plug into that position and say no to that offer like that. I mean, DJ Moore is in himself about a first-round pick at worst, a high second. So like that is, I don't know what prospect you could possibly have such a high grade on that you would decline that. I don't think you can. Like,
not in this draft. No, I don't think so.
I don't even think for Caleb, for like who I can't even think of a quarterback, at least off the top of my head, that I would put in that spot and still say no to that trade. I can't think of one.
No.
It's just too much. It was just too much. So Cam Ward is going to be the pick for Tennessee. We all know it. But for Cleveland, the team that I somehow thought was choosing first, I guess, they all of a sudden are put in a pretty interesting spot. And we don't know if Russell Wilson was going to be a Brown or not, but he at least visited like 3-4 weeks ago. And now he's in New York. And the way I interpreted that move, without getting too much into the New York talk, is that must mean the Giants feel like the Browns are pretty confident they're going with Shador. At least that's how I interpreted it. I don't know, Tej, if you interpreted it differently.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that as well. Like when they signed Jameis Winston, I was like, okay, if they take Shador Sanders, like they have a veteran type quarterback there. But now that they have 2 veterans on the roster, I was like, okay, that's like a little bit more interesting to me, where they either think they're not going to get Shador Sanders at pick 3, or they're okay passing on him and trying to like win with Russell Wilson this year because they kind of have that ultimatum from their owner to do that. It's been interesting to follow from Cleveland's perspective, because a lot of the reporting has been that they're leaning Abdul Carter, but it's also smokescreen season, right? So you can't really trust anything that's put out there. Like I really think Cleveland could go either direction with this pick, where they either take Shador Sanders or they go Abdul Carter / Travis Hunter, like in the non-quarterback category.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's smokescreen season. Like ever since like the Kyron Williams is returning punts thing happened, I'm not listening to any of these smoke screens. So, but yeah, I think I was split. I mean, last mock draft I did still select Shador to the Browns, just because I'm that like unexcited about Kenny Pickett and the idea of him manning a full roster for a year. But I don't know, man. I think that this means it's almost a lock for Shador for me. I love Abdul Carter. I have him infinitely higher than Shador on my board. Same with Travis Hunter. But yeah, it sounds like the Giants were so unconfident, and I'm sure they've talked to Cleveland and done their best to try and pry that information out of them. And it just really feels like it has to be Shador to Cleveland at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's kind of, we touched on this earlier too. It's one of those things for Cleveland. They're just in such a dire situation to figure something out at the quarterback position. Even compared to Tennessee, who obviously they feel, we basically know they're going with Cam Ward But I think I can almost entertain the idea of them not going Cam Ward more than the Browns not going Shedeur, because of it's just that I feel like it's that desperate of a situation for Cleveland, not even just literally, but situationally speaking, for like the organization and making money. And like, if you're an owner, you got to do something to bring people to the stadium. Like, if you're going into the year with who knows what at QB, like, they're used to people not showing up, but how much longer can you continue to do this? Like, you need something to bring excitement to your organization for your fans. So yeah, I do think Shedeur has and will be the pick, but for the sake of the thought exercise, this is fun. Strap in. What if they didn't go quarterback? Okay. The idea of Kenny Pickett was not what I would have had in mind, but it certainly can't be the solution. Kirk Cousins, and however that situation pans out, that might be the trapdoor, but that's not really exciting either. We need something to be excited about, something to sink our fucking teeth in if we're Browns fans. We want to show up, wear this jersey pridefully, wear the number 4 jersey pridefully. How about Dak Prescott?
Oh my.
How about Dak Prescott? Bruce Drennan, never heard of him in my life. Long time Browns radio host, apparently. He said today that the Cowboys are negotiating a trade with the Browns to send Dak to Cleveland so that Dallas could draft Shedeur. And this was part of the negotiation for Myles Garrett, and why he decided to stay and why he still feels like winning is at the top of Cleveland's priority. So, what if, monetarily speaking, this somehow worked out?
Yeah.
Would you ever entertain this, even aside from how much it would cost and what it would cripple you salary-wise? Like, would you entertain this if you were the Browns?
Yeah, I mean, like, if monetarily we could somehow figure this out, I mean, that is the biggest obstacle, looking at Cleveland. But, I mean, yeah, I would obviously rather take someone like Dak Prescott, who I feel like has had a very successful career, over someone like Shedeur, who we have no idea about. I think Dak still has plenty of good football left in him. He hasn't really given me a reason not to, except for maybe a handful of bad games this season. So, yeah, I mean, if somehow the financials weren't a problem here, I'd absolutely love to do that. But the financials are a problem, I would imagine, and I'd really have to see how that plays out before I got too excited about it.
Yeah, I think this trade can work from Cleveland's end, from a cap standpoint, because of like the prorated bonuses that they pay out to players, where they can like spread more money around and just push it back. From Dallas's end, I don't really think the cap financials works out, because they would be taking on so much dead money to pull off this trade. So I don't really know how you can even like field a roster if you're taking on like 150 million in dead cap, unless you're like restructuring every single player on the roster. So yeah, I don't think this is happening, but it would be fascinating if it did happen.
This was like, I read this today and I'm like, this is perfect for this type of episode. And I couldn't believe what I was reading. And I went and saw the video clip. It's like this older guy, like he had to have been doing it for like 45 years. He claims he's got he's got inside sources, and he's saying, I have a source it's part of why Myles Garrett was willing to stick around, was because they told him that they were going to negotiate for this trade. I'm like, no, not the fact that they just paid him $40 million.
A king's ransom.
Literally, not that. Because they told him, we're gonna go and trade for Dak Prescott. That's why you're gonna stay. I'm sure, right?
Yeah. I don't doubt they're gonna start negotiations about it, but like the fact, if they'd have to have Jerry Jones stamp it, and I don't see that happening. I don't know why they would give up Dak Prescott, who is like a proven good quarterback, for Shedeur Sanders, who is like as wild card of a first round pick as it is. So yeah, I wouldn't even touch that if I'm Dallas.
Well, there was more to that theory actually that I left out.
Oh,
do we remember what was the big rumor during the head coaching cycle?
Yes. Yes, Dion to take over as Dallas' head coach. Yes.
So Brian or Schottenheimer is just the dummy playing head coach holder for a year, so they can draft Shedeur, suck, and then fire Shotty, and then they can bring in Dion to coach his son. That's the big theory.
Well, if they did that, I think Dallas would. I don't think anyone would ever show up to a game ever again. I've already seen multiple Cowboys fans say that they're switching if Dak gets traded. So yeah, if they do, that stadium's getting burnt down.
Literally, Jerry Jones might get assassinated.
He will. I did predict he would at one point also, so that would work for me great.
All right. Well, that had to be mentioned because I could not believe that was making rounds, and it caught the traction it did. But for something more straightforward, which I don't think is much more realistic, but I think is a more fun thought exercise. If the Colts were to approach you right now for the 102, and let's say they threw an Anthony Richardson in a second for that pick. Basically, Shedeur Sanders or Anthony Richardson. What do you want?
Go ahead.
It would be Shedeur. It would be Shedeur for me. I like just haven't really loved what I've seen from Richardson in most of his starts in the league. Like he's had some exciting moments, but most of it has been inaccurate throws and like some injuries here and there. I do like the uncertainty of Shedeur Sanders a bit. Just like his range of outcomes being a little bit wider would like lean me in or have me lean in his direction. And then the other thing about him that I really like is just like he's insanely accurate to me as a passer. And I think that's like his special trait. And then he does a lot of other stuff that needs to be improved. But like if you start with that as your basis, like you hope if you're Kevin Stefanski that you can have him show some improvement to get to where he's like the 15th best quarterback in the league, and then eventually higher than that.
These guys couldn't be more polar opposite. Like that's where it starts with Shedeur is like the accuracy, and that's like for Richardson, it's like. Yeah, no, like this guy can't hit the broadside of a barn. So it's like, you want the upside and the potential, or do you want the safe floor? I guess it's kind
safe.
Kind of what it is, because the floor probably doesn't exist. It's like just an endless elevator shaft of like seeing what sort of bottom of the barrel records you could break.
Oh, God.
Because he started doing that pretty quickly in his NFL career. All right. Well, the Giants selecting third overall. If we're kind of keeping a mock in the back of our heads a little bit, Cam Ward is gone. Shedeur is gone. This doesn't have to be a hard template, but if that were to be the case, which it seems like it will be, Travis Hunter at 3 seems to be another shoo-in. But my question is, should he be?
That was pretty much my question. I pretty much just said Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter as like my main question for the Giants. And this is fully assuming that they're not getting Sanders, which it seems like they're not. Yeah. I mean, and this is also assuming the Browns don't pick up one of these guys and just have one of these guys fall into the Giants' lap. But if they had to make a choice, I think it's so hard not to pick the premium position in Abdul Carter. Like, how often do you have a high-end, like top 5 overall pick, edge rusher just fall into your lap and you don't take him, especially with how Kayvon Thibodeau's been very, I would say, underwhelming for where he was picked. Brian Burns, good, but like the production hasn't also been there for his price point. So if you could slug in a guy like Abdul Carter, I think that's really hard to say no to. As extremely exciting as much as I love Travis Hunter.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because I look at both Travis and Abdul. I mean, obviously these are blue chip guys, right? But I also ask myself, if we're talking about what they need, I would argue that Travis Hunter, if in this, I feel like also varies about what Travis is ultimately going to play. And I feel like that is more so up to Travis than it is going to be up to the team. And I think people might interpret that differently. But ultimately, if Travis wants to play receiver, he's good enough to, for one, and for two, like he's going to. Like that's just kind of the way the league works nowadays, right? So if he's not a receiver and he's a defensive back, the Giants invested a ton into their secondary already this offseason. They brought in Paulson Adebo, Javon Holland. They obviously have Deontay Banks out there too. So, it's not the worst thing ever going on. Tyler Nubin, even he's had a good start to his career. So if he's a defensive back, he's throw the cherry in. But Abdul Carter, it's kind of the same thing, despite maybe being underwhelmed by the performance of the guys you have. But what about offensive line? I feel like no one is talking about, and rightfully so, but after the way we've seen trenches, defensive and offensive, become such a focal point of this league, the Giants, even though Andrew Thomas got hurt, and it did have a lot to do with why it struggled last year, but I feel like tackle needs to be in the conversation here. Like, as crazy as it might sound, your guy Armand Membu at 3 to throw at right tackle, that's automatically one of the best tackle duos in football. And even if you have a couple quarterback dummies back there this year, doesn't mean you won't have a rookie coming in next year to protect. So that's kind of my hot take for New York is I don't think we're considering tackle as much as we should be for a team that needs to be kind of building from the ground up. And I think this is exactly how you do that.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think that 3 feels almost even a little rich, and not for the player, but for like the actual like predictive value. Like I'm not really sure who else would be taking him because the Patriots just invested in Morgan Moses to play right tackle. The Raiders feel like they're all in on Genti. I have no idea, but like I feel like a trade back for Membu would be outstanding. I just can't watch Evan Neal anymore. But yeah, I would absolutely love to see them invest in right tackle if they could get like some good value in a trade back.
Well,
yeah, I think when it comes to this pick for the Giants here, it's like I do see like the 2 like truly blue chip players in this class being Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter. So like it's hard for me to pass on one of those players just because I see them in such like a high light. Like they get like the highest grade that you have to give out to a player like on your draft board. But like from like a need perspective, I can definitely see offensive line being in play for them. Like you guys said, like especially if they were to trade back, like that would be great to get an offense lineman there. But I think it would be super cool to either watch like Abdul Carter and Dexter Lawrence on the same defensive line, like if they want to go that direction, or Travis Hunter and Malik Neighbors on offense if he ends up playing receiver. Like I think that would be so sick to watch as well.
Yeah, talk about wanting to bring excitement to your organization. I mean, Travis Hunter with Malik Neighbors would be peak entertainment. Like that is must watch. That's a must watch stuff. And I think it would be safe to say he'd be playing receiver if the Giants take him. I think it would be a little bit silly for them to invest in another corner if that's ultimately where he goes. Especially, I mean, positional value speaking, we've seen corners go this high and they've been worth it. But ultimately, I think Abdul Carter would be the move if Travis is playing in the secondary.
New
England.
100% agree. I was just going to agree with you. Yeah, hit New England because theirs is interesting.
It is very interesting because after yesterday, they now have kind of satisfied at least some of their thirst for a receiver as Stephon Diggs signed a 1-year, $26 million, essentially 1-year, $26 million contract. It's 3 for $69, but I have a feeling that won't play out as such. Nonetheless, though, my first question is, if Travis is there, which he might not be, is he even in play for New England still?
I'll answer this one. I think so. I mean, I don't think he's corner because they'd have Christian Gonzalez and Carlton. They just invested a bunch in Carlton Davis, shockingly like that. He got paid handsomely. But yeah, I don't think that an ACL torn Stephon Diggs is really going to get me like too scared to draft a blue chip player in the first round. Especially with Diggs' contract being structured in the way that it is. It doesn't seem like he's there for that long if he doesn't show up and be the guy with that like he's getting paid to be. So I think that it's malpractice if the Patriots don't get Abdul Carter or Hunter if one of them is available, and it seems like one of them will be.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it feels like that one of them are bound to be. I mean, if Shedeur goes at 2, the simple math says one of them is there. But it's another one of those cases for me. Like if Diggs is your quote unquote solution, and you're okay with that, maybe you go and get a receiver in the second round, and you can put him on the outside. Like again, the whole idea of an offensive lineman just feels too perfect almost. Like I think addressing this whole trend, I feel like we're seeing it's kind of started, at least John Harbaugh, never get the fucking two straight. John Harbaugh, comes in and he takes the tackle over the receiver, and it was very controversial. And Jim goes and takes the tackle over the receiver, and it was a big deal, right? And then we see the Eagles dominate in the trenches, and Saquon has the year he has, and everyone acknowledges the offensive line for being a big reason why. I mean, it just, for New England, with Mike Vrabel being very, very driven by the respective lines, like I think in my mocks, my ultimate final mock, I probably will have the Patriots going with an offensive lineman, regardless if Hunter's there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can definitely get behind that. Like, I do think that's their biggest need right now, because the offensive line that Drake May had to play behind last year was so bad. Like, it's a miracle he survived, not to play another season here. So just like getting that from worst offensive line in the league to slightly below average could do wonders for their offense. And like you guys mentioned, like Diggs was like still a fine receiver last year. So it's like, okay, maybe you're like okay at pass catcher. You're like comfortable enough going into the season, but just like shore up the offensive line, get that ready to protect May a little bit more, and like see what you can do on offense.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like you said, May was playing behind a turnstile the entire year, and thank God. I mean, he was as mobile as he was. I think he averaged like the most yards per scramble for like any quarterback. I don't want to say ever, but it was pretty high up there, the number he was at. So thank God. But it kind of once again, the question begs, like if for New England you are unsure, the whole idea of moving back is intriguing, especially, and I think for teams that already have their franchise quarterback, I think the idea of trading back, regardless of where you are, is easier. You can rationalize it far more because you know who you have in place, you know who you're trying to build around. So you might need, especially in New England's case, more than just, one player to, I guess, ideally in this case, one player in the trades case to help build around him. So I think New England should also be in that neighborhood too. Like, let's say Carolina came in and they wanted, because they're in desperate need for an edge rusher. And let's say the Giants took, Travis Hunter, who's available then, Abdul Carter. Like Carolina coming in and finally getting somebody they feel confident in rushing the passer. Like the 108, throw a second rounder in. I mean, and then Membu, who knows? Membu falls to you at 8. That's just as possible as him getting drafted as high as 3. So, like, who knows where Armand is going? So I almost think the range of outcomes for that could be just as beneficial compared to sticking right at the 4th overall pick.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big trade back guy. I mean, I always just love getting a slightly worse player on the board for like an infinite more value. But like a lot of teams aren't trade up teams, so it is always kind of hard to like really get somebody to come up. But like you said, if Abdul Carter's there, people will be calling. So it absolutely would be fantastic. But man, if Abdul Carter falls to 4, we're gonna look back at this someday and wonder like how that should happen, because that would be malpractice on multiple GMs' parts. It feels like.
I think he's gonna, like, honestly, I think in my final mock, he's gonna be there. Like, I really do. I don't know. I just don't think the Giants will be able to pass on Hunter.
I mean, if that's the case, I mean, if I'm Carolina, yeah, I'm offering everything. I'm offering the fax machine, like for Kyle Korver that one time. Like, I am offering everything. I'm offering my children to get Abdul Carter in Carolina. Like, that would be the most important thing for their franchise. So, but yeah, if not, like, I feel like Will Campbell's very much in play because, like you said, their line was terrible, and it's actually not much better. Like, I think that they got Morgan Moses on like a 3-year deal, and he's gonna be like 55. So like I think someone like Will Campbell that people are talking about having tackle or guard versatility possibly would be huge for them because they just need 4 guys at this point. But that kind of raises my question to you guys because this kind of applies for multiple teams. Is like with Will Campbell all of a sudden like hanging from a doorway and growing his arms an inch, like do you guys value him at tackle now that he has like Zach Tom level length, or do you still think he's better at guard?
That is a good question. When I was talking to EJ Snyder at the combine, he said like a quote that like really resonated with me. He was like, I would let Will Campbell fail at tackle first before I moved him to guard. And like I really like that framing because it's like, we've talked a lot about premium positions on here, right? Like you want Will Campbell to play a premium position in your ideal world. Like you want him to be at offensive tackle. If it doesn't work out there, you can definitely just move him to guard. He's someone who was able to come in early as a college player, produce like, very high pedigree, obviously a very good player. It's like, it's really just the arm length that's holding him back a little bit. But like, if he can figure out how to play at tackle in the NFL, like then you're set. And then if not, you can move him to guard and you have a very good guard, most likely waiting for you right there.
Yeah, that's actually almost exactly how I feel about it. Like, do I think he's a better guard? Probably, predictably, but like the premium like value on tackle is so much that like I don't value much of the other left tackles in this class any higher than him. Still, even besides the arm length. So yeah, I mean, yeah, like oh no, he failed at tackle. Here's a Pro Bowl level guard coming in now. So yeah, I actually really like that.
Yeah, that's a very realistic way to look at it. Like if you just trial and error it, like why would you try and jump the gun almost kind of in a way? Like he's the prospect he is at tackle for a reason. So why would you try and change that until you have to? So
he's a lot better than Vidarian Lowe still. Like even if he plays one hand like that, he'll still be better. So I'm excited about him.
I just can't believe that they got that far. That we're at this point. Free agency is basically over, and Garrett Bradbury at center, and and Morgan Moses was their big moves. I mean, and that's what makes me think ultimately that their mind is made up. Like I really don't think they can afford to do anything else. Quite literally.
Yeah. Jeez.
That will be interesting for New England. That will be the pick that in like if we all score mocks, or at least maybe we don't all, but I do.
Yeah.
That will be the pick I'm like sitting there scratching my head about for so long, and it'll justify the mock the rest of the way through, or it's going to plummet it right there. And that's going to be where everything just goes wrong and the dominoes fall in the wrong direction because I picked the Patriots wrong. For Jacksonville, though, another pick that feels, at least per the consensus mock, made up. But for the sake of the fun, if the Giants decided, hey, we need a tackle, if the Patriots decided, hey, we also need a tackle, if somehow that happened, don't shake your head. It's possible. It's possible. Like all of a sudden, let's put it this way. My kind of serious hot take is that there is a possibility that Travis Hunter is there at 5.
Yeah.
Which I think is the only player you could justify taking Mason Graham over. Like, other than that, it's Mason Graham and you leave happy, smiling with a big fat grin on your face.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. I mean, there's always going to be the Will Campbell argument just because of how valuable offensive line is. And they are losing Brandon Scherf, it feels like. It feels like he's not coming back. So they do need an offensive line, but like I think there is good depth in the interior O-line. And I think that having someone like Mason Graham is so valuable. I think people overreacted to him losing weight for the combine. I don't think he's going to play at 290. And I'm pretty sure he actually just weighed in like 305, something along those lines. So, yeah. I mean, if Travis is there, you take Travis. But if not, it has to be Mason Graham for me. And I'm not really entertaining much else unless you value Will Johnson that high for them.
Totally agree. Yeah, if it's a very simple decision, I think, right? It's like if Travis Hunter's there, you take him, you put him at corner, use him on some special packages at receiver. Like I'm sure Liam Cohen would have some fun with that. But like he would he'd fit what they need on defense very well. But if he's not there, like Mason Graham also just fits what they need on defense really well. Another prospect, like probably a slight tier lower than Carter and Hunter, but like still like up there in this draft is just like one of the premier prospects, plays an important position, like everything that you would want from a top 5 pick.
I think Sports Info Solutions on their big board had, and this could be wrong, but I think they have Graham at 1 on their big board, which is pretty wild. Like,
I mean, a defensive tackle that is like freakishly athletic with freakishly good hands and kind of like plays the run in the pass with like equal strength. Like it's hard not to put him at 1 in a lot of spots, but I mean, I think I'm just like so generally like high on Abdul and Travis. It's going to ever be hard to beat them as prospects. They're 2 of my favorites ever, but Mason Graham's probably 3. I think he might be 3 on my board. So I don't have a huge problem with that at all.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm like, wow. And not that I was not familiar with Mason Graham's game, but maybe I'm not familiar enough to the point where like a very reputable and respectable, site database group of guys is putting him that high. So Mason, I mean, if Mason Graham's not the pick for Jacksonville, there better be some very, very good options sitting there. Good application.
Well, now that Trent Baalke's gone, like I think that we can roll out like Mykel Williams being their pick. But like normally you would just like put every guy with like 34-inch arms on a board and just throw a dart at it, and that's who the Jags were picking. But now that we have like who I think is a pretty good GM, he's done a good job so far. I think he's going to actually get a good value pick this time around. But yeah. It feels like they're kind of set in stone. If it's not Hunter, it's going to be Graham. I can't imagine anything else. But the most exciting one for me has been trying to imagine what the Raiders are going to do, because like it feels like everybody's shooing in Genty, but I feel like they could have some really fun stuff at their disposal, seeing how this board's kind of falling. So like, I want to ask you guys, like, do you think that Genty should and needs to be the pick here, or if one of these guys fall, like, do you value a Graham or a Will Johnson or anybody like that over him?
Yeah, I'm not as sure as everyone that it's going to be Genty at 6. To the Raiders, like I think it very well could be, but I'm not like super confident in it because this is such a good running back class. Like there's so many good running backs in this class. Like every round feels like you can find a running back that you like wouldn't normally find in other years. So it's like if I'm the Raiders and I'm looking through all of that, I'm like, I would rather take Will Johnson or maybe even Ted McMillan or like something just along those lines at this spot, and then take a running back later in the draft, second, third, fourth round, just because there's going to be capable ones there, and you're not sure that there's going to be capable corners or receivers at that point.
I'm going to say it. Oh God. Oh no.
Go ahead.
Ashton Genty at 6 would be a bad pick. That would be bad process. I don't care if it works out. It would be bad. It would be bad process. Ultimately, long term, that is a decision that is a losing one for an organization. I know everyone points to Jahmyr Gibbs and how that worked out for Detroit because they were kind of the ones in recent memory that bucked that trend, and it has worked out, but it's so circumstantial. Like they already had the offensive line in place. This was like an established offense with a creative offensive coordinator that knew how to work him in. It was just plug in Jahmyr Gibbs and it all worked out. And we don't need to rehash why running backs do and don't work. Like we don't need to go through all that. But the Raiders aren't in that same position that the Lions were. So this doesn't feel applicable to say, oh, look at Jahmyr and it worked out.
Right. And also like you said, Taj, like having such a good running back class. Like you could possibly get someone like Quinshon Judkins in the third, which is insane that someone like his caliber could fall that far when he probably would have been my RB1 last year compared to those guys. So like it's ridiculous to have that good value. And I do think that like the difference between Genty and the next guy is like this, but I also think that the difference between Will Johnson and a second round corner would also look just the same. So I think going after someone like Will Johnson, going after a possible faller of a Mason Graham, even though they have Christian Wilkins back, like I think just passing on a good premium position value is going to be way too hard to pick up a running back when the rest of their team isn't up to standard yet.
Yeah,
right.
Totally agree. Yeah.
Well, I think too, and something that I think people don't know as much either is the depth of the running back class. You know, people think of there's 6 very good running backs, 6 or 7 very good running backs, but the real depth is in the 5th, the 6th, the 7th round. Like that's really where the true depth of this class lives. So even if Vegas wanted to wait that long, you know, it might not be what they do, but they could. Like this is the class where they could bypass this position specifically to that point because it's that deep. So that's, you know, people think of the top 6 and that's why it's so deep, but that's not true. Like 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, up to, you know, the top 20 backs, even like all of these guys can find their way onto a roster starting or getting significant touches to some capacity. Like they're all that good.
Yeah, like if you have guys like Rocket Sanders, you have guys like even like Dylan Sampson, who might be like people's, you know, RB5 to 8, who also were probably RB1 last year. Like guys like Dylan Sampson, like they're so talented, but they're just obviously going to fall because not every team needs a running back that high. So I think if they do play their cards right and try and time the slide, you very well could leave the 4th round with like a legitimate RB1 on your team, which would be ridiculous value if you can escape the 1st round with a corner or a D lineman or an O lineman that you value even higher.
Yeah.
It's not like they're trying to replace much either. So like I get you want to add as good of a player as you want, but it won't take much to improve your room. So do you really need to go and take the liquor on the top shelf when you're just trying to catch a buzz? Just get something on it. If you just hang out, like just drink what's there. You don't need to drink the premium liquor. So
you're drinking that Patronus with Marshawn Lynch over there.
Patronus is so great. All right, so that brings us to, I have to double check the order. So
the Jets.
Embarrass myself again. Thank you. The Jets. New York. I mean, this in my mind feels like another quote unquote obvious pick, but then again, it very much depends on what's available. Like it feels like tackle has to be the move for me, but there is a very strong likelihood, especially after all of the talk that we've had about offensive tackles, the top 2 specifically being taken by now. Like what else stands out positionally for this team that you guys feel like needs to be addressed so early?
I think, you know, that's the second corner, unless you think that Brandon Stevens comes back to form from like 2 years ago. I think that having a corner 2 would be pretty important. I don't know if he is, especially for how much his contract was, but replacing DJ Reed can't be done with Brandon Stevens. I think that their second defensive tackle spot would be pretty important, especially if, Lord forbid, that Mason Graham slid to 7. I think that could be a pretty easy shoe-in. So Will Johnson and Mason Graham at 7 are pretty enticing, even if there is a decent offensive lineman there. I mean, they're always due for a weapon. I mean, they got Malachi Corley last year, and the best thing he did was fumble on the 1 yard line. So, like, I've heard a lot of people talk about Tyler Warren, which is a little rich for me at 7, but like, I do see the vision. I think that would be exciting. So, yeah, like, I honestly think this is one that like the world is their oyster, and like, I don't have a shoe in for them at all. I think that there's 6 to 7 guys they could get, and I'd be cool with it.
Yeah. No, I mean, the Jets feel very open to a lot of different positions here where, yeah, if one of the top 2 tackles are there, you definitely see them taking one of them and putting them in their right tackle spot and rolling with it. But yeah, if they do end up trying to trade out of this pick, I could definitely see a weapon being added, especially like at tight end. Like either Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland would fit really nicely with what their offense needs right now, because they badly just need some juice at the tight end position. I agree. Like 7's probably too high to take a tight end. And like generally I'm like a little bit uneasy about tight ends in the first round in general, just because like they have such a low hit rate and long development curves. But like just because the need is there, like I think I'd be okay with it. But yeah, like if they don't go either of those positions, I could see something else in the defensive line as well. Just because like they put resources into their defensive line, but somehow it hasn't fully materialized.
No.
So they could definitely put in more to get there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson fans here, not big.
I mean more even interior. Like,
yeah,
I see Quinnen Williams, who's awesome, but then I'm just like, then just a slew of guys that probably shouldn't be starting. So I don't know. If Mason Graham is there, I would be really hurt if my team didn't pick him at 7.
Yeah, I think that would be catastrophic for an Aaron Glenn defense, nonetheless. Too.
Yeah.
But that does make me wonder, because I think the tight end thing is very interesting, because we're not talking about the Aaron Rodgers Jets here. We're talking about the Aaron Glenn, Justin Fields Jets. So this presumably is going to be a in-your-face, ground and pound, very physical type of offense. Like, I think, like you said, Austin, Tyler Warren here would be very, very rich. Like, very, very rich. Like, way too much. But if there was one spot where it made sense, like one team in the existence of football for this to make sense, it would be the Jets with Justin Fields.
Yeah. But like I was saying to a comment that said the exact same thing in ours, like they passed on Brock Bowers last year for Olu Fashanu. And I do agree Olu would be like a great pick, but like if they pass on like a near generational talent at the tight end spot in Brock Bowers, I think he's significantly better than Warren, though I do love Warren. And I don't know. I don't know if I value Fashanu much more than I value like a Will Campbell or a Armand Membu at this point. So, I mean, if they were willing to do it last year, like it feels like they might just let the tight end go again in favor of offensive line, because I think what do they have Max? Are they slated to have Max Mitchell starting right now at the other tackle spot? I mean, I can't really remember the rest of their depth chart, but they still need to. Has
Chukwuma Okafor.
They have Chucks. Okay, well, that doesn't answer my question actually with their tackle spots. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to say no to tackle unless they can somehow get like a Josh Connerly later. But yeah, man, they need offensive line help bad.
It feels like it almost feels like I'm confident. I would be most confident in the Jets trading back if Campbell or Membu aren't there. Like, talk about rich, like, who else you taking? Like, I'm not going Calvin Banks here. No shot.
No.
Hell. Like,
Jahdae Barron, like a trade back for Jahdae Barron, though, and like we're kind of in business. Like I'm kind of into that, but that's like a simple DJ Reed fill in. But yeah, man, the Jets have so many options. It's kind of hard to pick one, but we're looking like a team like the Panthers, like you were saying, like their edge rushers. I feel like this has to be like one of maybe 2 positions for Carolina. And I think it kind of starts with pass rush. Like, do you have a guy in mind, either of you, for Carolina off the bat, like a good scheme fit for them, or is it just kind of up in the air?
It feels like whoever can get to the quarterback. I think that they're a beggars can't be choosers kind of team right now, and I think I've seen Jalen Walker here a lot. I've seen Shamar Stewart go here a couple times, but to some degree, I'm coming around on the whole Mike Green thing, like after his pro day. And I've been on record over the last like week and a half, like the guy's got alleged sexual
yes, there you go,
allegations in his life. So that's interesting. And it steered me away from him. But in the case that he's there and he is as good as advertised, and you're a team like the Panthers that needs this immediate impact guy to come in and kind of be the fix right away, and like a Shamar Stewart, for example, he can be very good, like the ceiling's limitless, but the floor, who knows with a guy like him. And the same thing can be said for who the hell else did I just have in mind?
Micah Williams is always an option. Like Jalen Walker is always an option.
Jalen
like
Walker.
there's kind of like an infinite, and they're all so different from each other. Like they still like they need anything. Like they still need like a strong side, you know, kind of gap control, edge control guy. They do need a guy like Mike Green that can explode. I mean, they did blitz a crap ton last season. I'm sure they'd like to get those numbers down a little bit so they can just, you know, rush 4 and get home every once in a while. So having a guy like Mike Green would be nice. But man, like, I don't know. They have so many options. If they fail on this pick after having like 5 to 6 good edge rushers available, I don't know what to tell you. Like that would be bad.
Yeah. No, I mean, I feel like they have to go defensive line at this pick, and like all the names that you guys listed there would definitely make sense for them because they are so empty on their defensive line right now. So, so just like anything there in terms of pass rush on the outside would help.
Do you have a guy that you kind of like? Do you have your guy after Abdul Carter in this draft, or like are they kind of on the same level for you?
At edge, yeah. I mean, I do like Mike Green, like in terms of on the field. I know you brought up some off field concerns there. It's like I mean, like I think like he's great, like both production wise, statistically measurables, like checks a lot of the boxes that you would want there. As well, like I'm worried about Shamar Stewart's like lack of production. Like, you know, I get that like he's someone who can develop into a high end edge rusher. Like I see the vision with it, but like it's just like tough for me to get past just not doing much from a pass rushing standpoint. You know, in college. So like you know, Jalen Walker or Michael Williams, you know, I guess I could talk myself into there as well.
It sounds like Mike Green then. I mean, like if his background check clears and like we can determine he's good to go there. It kind of sounds like Mike Green, which is mine too. Shamar's kind of there's a limited ceiling there. Like when you look at a similar prospect, I kind of feel like Rashawn Gary a little bit. You know, like has the physical profile, was never that productive in college, and you're kind of just banking on development there in the NFL. But even then, the development's somewhat limited as a pass rusher, even with a guy like Gary. I don't think he's even eclipsed 10 sacks in his career yet. So to have someone like Mike Green, where you look at him and you're like, this guy could be a 15 sack guy at some point if he can just stay on the field. Yeah, I feel like it's hard for them to pass that up.
Yeah, like I think too, just for the sake of Bryce Young and making sure the upward momentum continues, like this you can't miss with this pick. Like you need to give some juice to your defense, and a guy that comes in right off the bat and is producing fast and isn't this project that you need to, you know, wait 3, 4, 5 weeks to hope he gets going. Like I don't think the Panthers are a team that, I don't want to say can afford that, but they're looking for more. They need somebody to come in and make an impact right away. So, and it feels like, as much as I don't like it, Mike Green is that guy.
Yep.
So I think those were the first 8 picks, if my math serves me correct, which no, I'm right. This was the 8th pick.
There you go.
So, look at that. So that will pretty much be it for this episode. Do you guys have any other questions or comments you want to tack on before we close up shop?
No, I mean, I'm just happy to see we're right under an hour. Like that might be record time for us. Like that's incredible.
We have a bad habit of making them run long. So especially when we have guests on, we don't want like the hour 40-minute kind of thing.
Yes.
That's not what usually ask somebody. It's not necessarily what they signed up for. So
yeah,
we definitely got to get better at that. But anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. As always, be sure you are checking out the socials for all 3 of us down in the description below. And if you enjoyed this episode, like, comment, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. And we will see you in episode 21.